relation to the background and also what is emerging that some people in CPP are saying that they were not privy to action. Oliver, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Bernard. Hope you're doing well.
Great. So yesterday we saw this release, which coincided with, of course, 59 years of Nkrumah's overthrow. So we saw the correlation there. For how long has the hub been contemplating this action? Give us some background to the action.
So the action and the research behind it has been going on for at least a year. We've been putting together the record. We've gone through the archives. We're going to be able to establish how the 1960 Constitution came into being, the very events of the 21st February 1966. So if you look at the suit itself, there's a long list of historical material that is referenced in order to make sure that we are getting this correct. So it's gone on for at least a year.
Wonderful. So the main argument is that what? Just put the argument in context for us.
Yes. So in 1993, the Supreme Court held that public resources and the public institution cannot be used in the glorification, celebration of any act that overthrows a constitutional government. This is what is called the 31st December case. Now, this case builds up on the jurisprudence of the courts in that to be able to determine whether in respect of the Kotoka International Import, as well as a trust which was created under the General Kotoka Trust Decree, were done in connection with the overthrow of the 1960 Constitution. And if that's the case, is this supported by the 1992 Constitution? That's the thrust of the argument that is being made here.
Wonderful. Now, there was a statement I saw from a CPP on a CPP letterhead claiming that they were not consulted in being first, I don't know what the word is, plaintiff in the matter. Did you engage CPP in this endeavor, and how sure are you that they are with you in this matter?
So it was also forwarded to me this morning. It's in fact surprising that we had the consent of the CPP. In fact, prior to this release, the current chair of the interim committee of the CPP, CPP's own internal structures have not been functional for a while, had a conversation with me and mentioned that, since the suit was filed, other elements within the party have been raising objections, as well as were the MPP elements within the party. To be honest, we are a bit also surprised as to what is going on the CPP end. But as far as we are concerned, we have had reach out from the former flag bearer of the CPP and others who said they are prepared to even substitute the CPP in the matter if it's going to cause unnecessary confusion and delay. We don't really want to get into internal divisions within the CPP on this matter in fact.
Okay, so I can understand why you chose the legal route. Some people would have felt that you could have just appealed to the president to, by executive order, change the name. Some people also thought maybe Parliament could have been the route. Why the judiciary as the angle?
So the first thing is that, unlike some of the namings that the former president did, this case it can't be the same thing, because for this airport, it was because of a decree that was passed. So it's an act that allows the name to be so. So the president cannot, by executive instrument, do anything about it. It has to be through the instrument of Parliament for the executive to repeal the law. Now, we can work in chew gum. The presidency can determine that it is interested in the matter, and for which reason is going to instruct the Attorney General to introduce a bill which removes the name if they were so inclined. But for us, it is the bigger question, particularly because we have become the most stable democracy within our sub-region, and where the sub-region is tearing apart over coup d'etat and other things, to reaffirm the Ghanaian commitment and the 1992 Constitution's commitment to a democracy that evolves and changes itself through the mechanism of the democracy itself. That's what we're giving the court the opportunity to be able to pronounce loudly. And we think that development is also useful, and that both things can happen at the same time.
Finally, the main argument I've heard against this is that it's not necessarily prudent to judge historical events with today's eyes, because at the time that Nkrumah was overthrown, he was a despot. There was a one-party state, and he had lost favor. And indeed, Kotoka was hailed as a liberator at the time of the coup. So that even though hindsight has taught us that Nkrumah was probably right in a lot of the things he did, many people alive at the time believed that Kotoka saved them from something pretty bad. And number two, the naming of the airport after Kotoka is part of our history. So history is conflictual, history is difficult. So we have to accept it and move on. And that this is a bit of revisionism. How do you reply?
You know, on the first question, one of the things that we are very particular in this suit is not to open the Pandora's box into judgment on Nkrumah's record, or even think that it is prudent for us to engage in the conversation as to which constitutional democracy is deserving of a coup d'etat. It is a standard by which even the Fourth Republic does not want to be judged, we think. The bigger question for us is narrow, as to whether or not, based on the court's own reasoning as to what the 1992 Constitution supports, the naming of the airport is done to glorify Kotoka's role in the overthrow of the 1960 Constitution. I do not accept the view that there was no way for Nkrumah to have been removed through the mechanism of the democracy. In fact, we go into a great deal to be able to show that everything that happened was, in fact, constitutional, and that there was mechanism constitutionally, including, for instance, mobilizing a political project and replacing parliament then. If we are to judge that by the same standards today, some people could say, well, there's no way practically to be able to remove the two-party states, and NDC and MPP are a problem, and that no credible third-party project can be done unless through a coup d'etat. We don't want to get there. Every democracy has its challenges, but the commitment we have is to be able to improve the democracy through the mechanism of that democracy itself. This is what this suit is about. Now, the question of revisionism. Listen, history is made up of both naming and renaming. So the process of determining, in the same way that Mumbai became Bombay and the names go back and forth, even the project of removing the name is also part of history. For us, it's not about revising a bitter record. In fact, we can't do that. All we are saying is that what is this country entitled to project as its best element? If the 1992 Constitution is what we use as an indicator of what we should project, then it tells us clearly, at least the 31st December case emphasized, that of all the things we can choose, coup is not one of the ones that the Republic should be valorizing, at least a coup against a constitutional democracy. So that's what we want to be able to hold the democracy to its own commitment around that issue. On the bigger question, I think some people have talked about, okay, this opens a bigger box. Does it mean that all coup makers ought to be removed and things like that? No. In fact, if the Kotoka airport was named after Kotoka, for any other thing but his role in the overthrow of the 1960 Constitution, we don't think that there will be a case to be made under the 1992 Constitution. There's, of course, a moral argument to be made, but it's not a legal one there. So for us here, it doesn't make any difference whether Kotoka is named after a street in Malata or at the airport. No. The bigger question is this to valorize a coup d'etat? And if it is the case, the Supreme Court says you cannot do that. It can be named after him because his name is the nicest one we have ever heard. That, there's no legal remedy there,
This is a really interesting case. Do you have an idea of the timelines? When is there a hearing date?
So we've just filed this matter. The Attorney General must be served, and then they have 14 days from service to respond. We are also quite keen and interested in how the Attorney General intends to play this, because it gives an indication into this government's thinking. So many times for persons like myself who identify as Nkrumahist, so many times the NDC has talked about, they are of Nkrumahist traditions and things like that. We are really interested to see how they also play it in the courts. But yes, once the hearing is fixed, I think that this is a matter that we should all be engaged in the conversation at least, because it sets a benchmark for how tomorrow would be judged.
Oliver, thank you so much for talking to us.
I appreciate it.
Oliver Vormawor is a convener of the Democracy Hub, and very interesting case. And guys, the reference to the 31st December case for me is interesting, because I think the time MPP argued that this was MPP against the Attorney General, that 31st December cannot be celebrated because we cannot use state funds to celebrate 31st December as a public holiday, because I will be using state funds to celebrate a coup, and that was not right under our new constitution. And this is where they are getting their inspiration from. And I feel that's a really strong legal argument, which will take a lot of... You need somebody to argue forcefully to say this is not correct. Although I know that celebrating a holiday and having a name is not the same thing in terms of resource allocation, right? Celebrating a holiday may mean you go and do a parade, and therefore you have to use money. But I think it's in that spirit in that spirit, there's a big compensation to Susu.
No, I think it makes